Well, there you go. Now, unfortunately, Dan Kilgore could not stay with us here, but that's understandable. That pro football players are rigidly timed in terms of their interview schedule. I do want to thank the Dolphins for arranging that. I had tried to go through the Niners for a long time, so I was actually happy he got dealt to the Dolphins, that sort of thing. A lot of that times you talk about the organization that franchise will have. Certainly under Jed York, the Niners' reputation is not what it once was under the DeBartolos. So there you are there. Let's see here. And we want to, now we've got, hold on a second here. All right, Tri-City Sports Now. Tri-City Sports Now, you're on the air. Or not. Well, we have a call coming in, it says here from Florida. So, no, I did not think, I was wondering here, they're calling me back? Really? I don't know this. So, anyway, my apologies with that. I do want to talk a little bit, it's the idea, not upset with the deal to Miami. And one of the things also about this is the income taxes of Florida. Florida has no income tax. California, of course, heavily taxed. And so one of the interesting things here is that Kilgore is going to be about $300,000 richer by playing for the Dolphins than he will for the 49ers. What do you think about that? Let alone, and I don't know what, Dade County is as compared to San Francisco or where exactly Kilgore lived in the Bay Area or so. However, you got to think, though, that there'd be some local taxes as well. I mean, San Francisco is the I think most expensive place in the country to live. Now, the other thing, I like the Dolphins, in addition to getting Kilgore, Danny Amendola, the possession receiver, and certainly Frank Gore. Those are some big pickups here. Some talk, at the end of last year about the Dolphins and, about the Patriots. And, is it at the beginning of the end for them? So the Dolphins take away their possession receiver, guy who came up big in the playoffs, right? The idea Tom Brady isn't getting any younger. Bill Belichick and Brady kind of having a bit, they're now growing a little bit, shall we say, possibly sick of each other. That's what that's what some of the scuttlebutt out of New England is. Belichick has always been one of the coaches that has thrived on the power of negative thinking. The Bobby Knight way, who actually wrote a book on the power of negative thinking. Burr under the saddle, that sort of thing. Tom Brady did not have any filter, if you will, or protection from Belichick. And that was by design. It wasn't uncommon that, Belichick would call him out during film study. A high school quarterback could have made that throw, he'd say. And Brady, to his credit, laid back when he'd be the leader and not wanting to be above criticism. I mean, what would it have meant? One of the guys, that sort of thing, took it in stride. But there was some feeling as this went on, especially after the Patriots' defeat of Houston, not in last season's playoffs, but in the 2016 season's playoffs, when Brady completed only 18 of 38 passes, but still the Patriots won comfortably, that some of this criticism was a bit much. Let's put it that way. And no, Belichick is not a touchy-feely guy. When Belichick was the coach of the Cleveland Browns a generation ago, he was despised. I've never seen a coach more hated than Belichick. And it was in a bad situation, sure. But I mean, Rich Kotite with the New York Jets going 4-28 was not as universally hated as was Bill Belichick. And his own players, Belichick's own players would come out and say that, well, New England, that's not the situation. Not the situation at all. But the idea is now that maybe Brady and Belichick, that relationship is beginning to grate on each other and such. Speaking of which, let's talk a little bit, and I really regret that I didn't have enough time to talk to Kilgore about Colin Kaepernick. I know that I had read earlier that Kaepernick was somebody that, the players were somewhat on the 49ers supportive. Oh, he cares about society, that sort of thing. It's just the way that you care about society, I think, that ticks people off. Constant tweeting of praise for the Black Panthers, for instance. Yeah, that's a little bit different. Now, but I mentioned this and how, Bill Belichick has succeeded, maybe a lot of football coaches have succeeded, in the power of negative thinking, the Bobby Knight way, let's just say. Interesting story. It's out today in the Boston Globe that I was picking up doing some research here for the show. And it's by Dan Shaughnessy, one of the better-known sports writers in America. And it's in the millennial age. It's a whole different ball game. Written right here, and I'm holding up on our 1420 NBC Sports Radio Tri-Cities Facebook broadcast on my own Facebook page here. It speaks of the Red Sox hiring as their manager Alex Cora. Why? He has no managerial experience. None of the minors didn't come up that way. Alex Cora, okay, good baseball man. Nobody suggested otherwise. But the idea is this. He's 42. He relates well to players. And in the millennial generation, the tough manager, the Dick Williams, so to speak, is out the window. This has been going on for some time. It's interesting, though, that in football, it continues to be successful, but in baseball, no. Shaughnessy writes some things about the changing of the guard. He mentions Terry Francona, former Red Sox manager, now managing the Cleveland Indians. He was born in South Dakota. He is not from South Dakota, but his father, the recently deceased Tito Francona, was a minor league ball player. He was married at the time. He was on a road trip. His wife, back, I guess he was playing for a team in South Dakota, and bore Terry alone. That's what it was like back in those days, circa 59 or 60. All right. Later it goes on, and Terry Francona in his career in the 80s is playing for the Cincinnati Reds. He says to his manager, Pete Rose, we all know him, that, my wife is having a baby and I'd like to be with her. I plan on going. Well, that's fine, Pete Rose says, but don't come back if you decide to go. It was still the case around in the 80s. It was sort of hit or miss at that time. Sometimes you could get time off and such. Now, it's not even considered. You get time off. If your child is sick, you get time off. In fact, that's been the way. I know in hockey, as far back as 1989, Tom Barrasso's daughter took ill, and he missed half the season caring for her. But the idea here is that, in baseball, it is now not so much about strategy, which would explain some of the wacky moves, and also how pointy-headed Poindexters and agents are able to make strategic moves during ball games, whereas managers are, no. And it's, I think, one of the reasons why there's been support for the National League to adopt the designated hitter, which is the wrong way to go. It'll only continue to add length to games and be an opposite direction of the pace of play, of rapid pace of play that Rob Manfred wants to do, but seemingly puts in every bad rule to do it. And anyway, they're going at this. In 2018, Shaughnessy writes, is communicating with the millennials. Geez, I don't know, 30-year-olds now millennials? They're not, okay. And Shaughnessy, of course, is not a millennial and such. It is the question, though, is, are baseball players perceived now as being too coddled? And I think they just might be. Bartolo Colon never learned English. He didn't have to. There'd always be a translator, or it worked out well. Poor start. I don't have to talk to the reporters if the translator doesn't come around, right? There are now things like a mental skills coach. I probably could have used a mental skills coach when I was a bad JV outfielder on my high school team. But anyway, Shaughnessy asked Jim Palmer if they had a mental skills coach with the Orioles, and his answer was, of course, no. And if we did, he would have been talking to Earl Weaver all the time here. Motivational speeches was get your ass in gear. That sort of thing. I don't know. I do think that, you no longer have, for instance, the Reds used to have a rule, no facial hair on their ball players. Today, you try talking to a multi-million-dollar young professional, shave that mustache. They're going to look at you funny. What are you talking about? Anyhow, it's just an interesting read that Shaughnessy writes about the differences. I do think, though, we've lost something, and I think that this might be one of the reasons why, baseball has lost some of its popularity, is that the strategy, the modern day strategy, so many times does not make any sense. Pulling out Rich Hill, not abolishing the complete games when we're told, hey, athletes today are bigger and stronger than they ever were. The overemphasis of fear of a pitcher facing a hitter for the third time. On average, it's 8 extra points of on-base percentage. Say 368 to 360. That's really enough to take out a pitcher going well, especially a top starter for a middle-of-the-pack reliever? Really? Anyhow, a very interesting piece, and just the differences between baseball and football, and maybe also that the sports fan is always usually critical. Actually, I've always thought East Tennessee has some of the least critical fans in the country. That's why, for instance, I began Marky's monologue talking about how, Tennessee fans right now are saying, oh, good riddance to John Curry. They're not saying, he actually has a track record of hiring better coaches than Phil Fulmer, and the basketball coach he hired, he just beat Kentucky. Just something the Vols didn't do in the SEC championship game. Did we make the right move? We could have had Mike Leach. Anyway, instead they're going to focus on a text in which the former AD Curry calls Tennessee fans wacko. Now you know that the Vols fans are going to see pound on that. And I'm going to tell you the latest Tennessee news, both from spring practice as well as what's going on, yes, with the Curry buyout of $2.5 million and more, plus some pro football talk. That's coming up. If I don't get in this segment, I'll get it in the next hour. And Jerry Bonkowski joins me at 1 p.m. to talk NASCAR there in Martinsville this week. Tri-City Sports Now.
GMC.